beautiful sunny evening here in Bristol, and this restoration is drawing close to its completion. What we're going to try and do today is put the dashboard back in, but before we do that we're going to oil all the little heater mechanism levers etc. to stop them squeaking. What we've got to do before we can put that dashboard in is attach this central piece of trim onto here, because it attaches with two special kind of push-on clip fittings, which I don't think it'd be possible to attach, or would be very difficult to attach once that's in place. So we're going to whip that over and put the clips that clip on, and it'd be very difficult to do this with the thing in situ. They basically clip over there, and the other one is right in that corner there. So I'm just going to push those on with a pair of pliers. You could potentially also use little maybe star clips, but none of the ones I had fitted. Maybe there'd be some other fitting, but we're going to try and put on the clips that came off. And easily, these two pieces of trim here, you could put them on now with the sliders in place, but I'm going to actually attempt to put my hand through here or through the back here to put the nuts on afterwards, to see if that works, and if not we can always take it out and do it the other way. Getting this in without scratching it, because we've just painted this. The reason for taking it out was because it had chips all over that somebody had painted it previously. Now when we took it out, we actually took the A-pillar trims off, so I'm just gonna see roughly how it fits without bashing it around too much, I hope. What I was saying before was you could at this stage potentially connect these up now and try and get the whole thing in situ with these connected, but I'm not going to try and do that. I think it's going to be true. What we're going to do is undo those two bolts there and lower the steering column down to make it easier to get the dash in. This bit is getting this to clear the indicator stalk there, so we're kind of coming at an angle, and then we're going to lift it up. I suspect the way to do it really would be to drop down the steering wheel. So we're just going to try and clear that bit now and see if we can hook in the first screw over there. So that side is pretty much in. We just have to figure out where this is catching now. As I say, try to put this lot in without scratching too much paint off. We did finally manage to get the dashboard in last night, and I thought I'd just quickly give you a few tips on how not to do it, or the mistakes that I made. The most difficult bit by far is getting this section of the dash here over the indicator stalk and this column here. I suspect that the way to do it would be to drop that down entirely, but in the event, what I did was I just undid two bolts here and here, which allows that to drop down by 1 centimetre, and I just loosened the fitting, the ignition fitting, to allow it to twist up. So that gave me just about 1 centimetre lower on the steering column, and that allowed me to get this dash over the steering column. And you basically start off putting the dash in this side on the steering wheel side, and it twists in, and you finish off putting it on that side. So there are only 3 fittings, two screws, one on this end, the same fitting on the other end. The first mistake I made was the central fitting basically is like 2 pieces of flat metal that go together, and you've got to make sure that you get the bit that's attached to the dash has got to be on the other side of the bit that's attached to the car. Initially when I put the dash in, I had it on this side, which meant that the dash was not far enough over to the left, which meant that these bolts didn't line up and various other things didn't line up. The other error I made was having this on, it actually got jammed between the steering column and the dash, and I had to end up taking that off again to get that free. Once again, with that jammed in there, you couldn't get the dash over far enough. Other than that, there were no major dramas. I'm hoping that that part of the steering heater box there can fit in afterwards, and I didn't need to put that on first. And similarly, I'm now going to try, I haven't attached these little bits of trim now, I'm now going to try getting my hand in and putting the rear bolts on those pieces of trim, which I believe is going to be very tricky. Put in is this central heater section here. Now I suspect that this should have a couple of clips that clip this to the top of there. There were no clips on this when I took it off. It seems to hold quite steady in place, but I do have a spare clip. So I'm going to put one clip on and just order a couple of clips from Mercedes. I suspect you'll still be able to put those clips on through the central stereo section even after that's on. So you could either try putting that on before you put the dashboard in, but I'm going to do it this way around, put that in after the dash is already in. This central slider is held in by two Phillips screws here and here. There were nuts on the other end, but they actually tightened up without having to get a spanner on there. Try and put a couple of little clips on the top of that section there, just to clip that to there. I suspect that would have been much easier to do first before putting the dash in, but it's easy with hindsight. That went in through there without any problem. Next up, we're just going to tighten these two bolts here, two 10mm bolts, pulling the dash tight towards the left-hand side piece of trim. It bolts on with two 8mm bolts. And it goes on first, and then the A-pillar trims go on because they're basically going to be covering that. Okay, so that's going to bolt onto that there. Trim piece in. Transpires there's actually a clip missing from here to stop that moving, but we've actually just managed to fix that with a cable tie. Well, we finally managed to get that little piece of trim there in, and then we can put the A-pillar trims on, but I have to say that's very, very fiddly getting that in, and the secret is to make sure that that pipe is all the way out of the way, and also that the headlamp switch, this headlamp switch here, is completely taken out and put over here somewhere out of the way, and then you can just about get your hand in like that to tighten the bolts up, and you can get a small 8mm socket on there as well. Console in, there's nothing special about that apart from if you've got a handbrake, you're going to need to take the handbrake, undo the 4 bolts that hold the handbrake down and just twist it to one side so you can slide that in. And the only thing to be careful of is you're not trapping any wires, that all of these wires here are free. And similarly up here, each car varies slightly depending on what exactly is on the central console, but the central console is going to go in here, and we're going to need on this particular car 2 vacuum lines, 2 for the vacuum adjust headlamps, and 1 heater plug here, and all the other wires are going to be related to the stereo, are going to pull out through here. There's going to be 2 plugs up here, 1 for the rear window heater and 1 for the lights up here, and the rest are speaker cables, aerials and power to the stereo. So on this particular central console, here it is, there's just 1 plug on the back for the speaker and 1 plug that should plug into there, although I haven't actually seen that yet. Start clipping in all of these center panels and these switches, etc. I'm just going to reconnect the battery and see if the heater blowers and those switches actually still work. Okay, first we're going to check these lights up here. Okay, those are both working. That's good. Next we're going to check the fan blower. Which is not working. Okay, it's the fan blower. You could have the key in the ignition and turn 2 clicks, and let's have a little test. And that is working. Everything's working. We're ready to plug the central console back in. We've connected 2 vacuum lines for the vacuum headlight assist. There was a wire coming out of the back of this switch here, and that goes into the central console into, I don't know if you can see that, there are little receivers here, and I suspect you get plugs that plug into there if you need power, but we're just going to plug it in there to get it out of the way. If anybody does know what these are for, I don't have any plugs like that in the back there, so maybe they're for something else, a different model of car. But we're going to connect the blower up and then click it into these little slots here, and then we'll be ready to put the ashtray pieces going as follows. Usually you'd put this piece in first, the gear sticks around, because there are two screw holes, it screws down here, and if you try and do it the other way around, those screw holes will be covered. Now in this particular case, we're going to veneer this gear sticks around, so we're not going to put it in yet. And you'd put that in first. Generally it's held in by two screws, then you would put this in, and the ashtray actually holds in this central console. The top part of the ashtray holds in the central console, and the ashtray is just held in by two screws there, and all you have to remember to do is to plug it in from this side, and the ashtray will kind of bend in that way. So you put that end in first, and then you'll squeeze that end in, and then that will all be flush in there. And the last thing to put in is the stereo if you have one. ATSL, there's two screws at the front holding the center piece of trim in, and one screw here. So we're just going to whip that screw in, then we can tighten up the handbrake, and we can put the handbrake cover on. In the headlamp switch in, it only fits in one way. Remember to put this bit on first, and then put the nut on after that. That's held on with a 28mm nut, which I'm going to tighten up. The nut on the switch just pushes on, making sure that you get it the right way around. Nice full push, and just there we go. Next up, we're going to put the glove box back in. What you should have is 4 of these little plastic fittings fitting in here. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 4 of these. They're like a push fit that push into those, and will clip the glove box in. But before you put the glove box in, make sure you've got these special speed clips here on the actual dash. We took ours off and we painted them because they were rusty, so we're just going to slip them back on, and that's where the hinges go. And then we're going to put the door on first, and then put the glove box in. The glove box on, you've got to thread these hinges through these little rubber grommets. So I'm just going to take these 2 screws out first and thread the hinges through first, and then attach the hinges, attach the these bits here, and then attach the hinges. Put these little bits of metal in. Make sure you put them in the right way around. They should go this way around, so they can. If you put them in the wrong way around, the glove drawer won't sit flush. So basically they should be pointing inwards and sloping down, if that makes any sense. Just before you tighten down these hinges, make sure that when you close the glove box that these lines here are as they should be, which is perfect. And if you have any problem tightening up this screw here, you can just use something like a washer. Get in there with your hands with a washer to tighten up that screw. Once you've got those screws tightened down, I always put a drop of oil in these fittings here, because at a later date, if we're going to get a new stereo or something like that, you may need to take this glove box out again. So I'm going to just put a drop of oil in there before we put the glove box. Okay, that's the glove box in. Speaker cover on. Next up, I think we're not going to put the instrument cluster in just yet, because one of the cogs is broken. That means that the mileometer isn't working, so we're just waiting for a part for that. So I think next up we're going to see if we can recarpet these side panels and put that under piece of trim on there, and just finish this side of the car, and obviously connect up the under dash lights.